Hello everyone, welcome to Lukman IAS. Today we are going to have the Hindu analysis of 12th February 2021. So let us see which are the important articles in today's The Hindu newspaper. Yes, these are the articles for mains purpose and for prelims purpose. And in the end we have added some prelims pointers also. So let us take overview of these articles for mains purpose. The first article which is relevant to our GS2 paper governance part, here it is talking about the regulation of cryptocurrencies in India. So the government is going to come up with new legislation, the bill in the parliament that will surely focusing on bringing regulation of these cryptocurrencies, for example Bitcoin and other such cryptocurrencies which works on we can say Bitcoin, sorry, not Bitcoin, blockchain technology, right? So yes, the article is discussing why there is need of regulation. At present there is no regulation, and the background, how the government had come up with earlier the ban, RBI had banned the let's say use of these cryptocurrencies and asked the banks to not involve in those transactions. So yes, so at present whatever the regulation that government is going to come up with, that should not be hard regulation, that should be smart regulation. This is what the article is giving way forward. A resilient future for Uttarakhand. So here again daily we are looking into some of the new aspects of the glacial burst that happened in Uttarakhand Chamoli district. So here also the article is providing some way forward directly that can be used in our examination when we talk about the geography part or disaster management part. At the same time, even in essay, many a times the topic relates to natural disasters or environment and geography part. So for that purpose we will take input. And for prelims purpose, privilege motion against Moitra. So one of the MP in the parliament, so privilege motion is moved against the MP. So what do you mean by privilege motion and how it is carried out, who can let's say move this motion, all these things here from prelims perspective we will look into that. And some prelims pointers, directly the whole article is not important, but some good information from various articles we can look into from prelims perspective. Let us see one by one these articles. First, here tender cut, the article is having context of recently the government has said that it is going to come up with new legislation which will regulate the cryptocurrencies in India. So at present there is no law which regulates cryptocurrencies, and increasingly there are many such transactions happening in the cryptocurrency. The most favorite cryptocurrency that the people or those financial transactions that are happening is Bitcoin, and there are many such other digital currencies, virtual currencies we also call them, cryptocurrencies, right? So earlier, if you go to the background, in 2018 RBI had asked banks to not involve in transactions with cryptocurrencies. At the same time, it asked banks to avoid any kind of relation with those who have such kind of transactions. Okay, now after that RBI had overturned that decision and said that cryptocurrencies cannot be banned straight away. The blanket ban cannot be let's say there because of the disproportionate action. Okay, so that's why now the government is to come up with new legislation to regulate them. Okay, so there was also one committee, expert committee, which had recommended to ban these cryptocurrencies. However, it has also recommended that the government should come up with its own cryptocurrency or virtual currency, digital currency, right? So this was the recommendation of that committee. However, now the cryptocurrencies are to be regulated in India, and all over the world many countries have banned these cryptocurrencies. However, still the use of cryptocurrencies can be seen to some extent. Even in China it is banned, but still it is used. Now why there is need of legislation itself? So first we have to understand that many a times this cryptocurrency can be used for illicit transactions. So for example, suppose the terrorists and such terrorist funding organizations. Suppose the funding is being done to terrorists, so that can be happening in cryptocurrencies. And surely this cryptocurrency is so much secure and we can say that peer-to-peer transactions. Okay, here there is no third party, let's say middleman between the two parties wherein the transaction is happening. Okay, let me explain you the concept also of cryptocurrencies, how they work. So here they work on the let's say technology of Bitcoin. So these cryptocurrencies, suppose I want to have the transaction with another person. So in normal transaction, if I want to send money to another person, then I will transfer that to his account, but that transaction is let's say carried out in the way by the bank, right? So the bank acts as a middleman and bank charges some money for that, right? So somehow the bank also carries the information of such transactions. However, here in this cryptocurrencies, there is no such information devolved to third party, or we can say middleman. Here there is a distributed decentralized public ledger is there, and all these transactions are, let's say, approved by all the nodes, or we can say that the chain in that blockchain, we can say that all the nodes, they approve that transaction and the final transaction happens. Okay, and that transaction is added in that ledger book now. Okay, so this is how the secure platform of these cryptocurrencies, and it is gaining more and more traction in recent times, and that's why they need to be regulated, because there are chances of, let's say, misuse, we can say. The second aspect is that at present RBI or such regulatory organizations like SEBI, they do not have any kind of rules or any guidelines or any law to guide them for or regulate these cryptocurrencies. So that's why they are helpless at present. So suppose by any act of parliament they are given some powers, then they will be easily able to regulate them, right? So that's why there is need of such legislation. Now, when we have such legislation or any kind of regulation, what kind of regulation should government have? So surely there should not be any hard regulation or straight away banning all these cryptocurrencies. Rather, there should be smart regulation, and here the article is proposing such kind of smart regulation wherein there will be, let's say, there can be government's own digital currency also and other currencies also. Simply we can compare it with all the, let's say, the digital wallets and such companies which are in there. At the same time, the government has come up with its own UPI, Bhim UPI, and the other companies are also there. So there is healthy competition and there is regulation also. So similar manner, there can be regulation of these virtual currencies or digital currencies also. Fine. So smart regulation should be there, because the blanket ban will not work. There will be transactions even if it is banned. The example is of China. Okay. So that's why the government must resist the idea of ban and push for smart regulation. So you can use this as a way forward, right? So you can attempt this question: should cryptocurrencies in India be banned or regulated? Give justification to your view. So here you can say that they should not be banned, rather they should be regulated, right? And you can mention the law that the government is going to come up with, and smart regulation you can mention here, right? And you can mention the recommendation of committee also, expert committee. Fine. So yes, this was related to governance part. To some extent it also relates to GS3 paper, cryptocurrencies, economy part is also there. At the same time, from science and technology perspective, Bitcoin, the cryptocurrencies, working of these cryptocurrencies, the technology part, and we can say that blockchain technology. So we have to prepare accordingly from various perspectives, right? Yes. Now moving on, resilient future for Uttarakhand. So yes, surely the article is talking about both. First of all, why Uttarakhand is so much vulnerable for such natural disasters, and in second part it is providing some measures and suggestions for having the climate change resilient infrastructure and such kind of future. Okay, so some way forward is also provided in this article. Now, why Uttarakhand is so much vulnerable for natural disaster? Before that, let me tell you the kind of question that can be asked on this. Okay, why Uttarakhand state is more vulnerable to natural disasters? In the view of such vulnerabilities, what should be the approach of government towards development in Uttarakhand or Himalayan state in general, they will ask. Okay, now here the answer is for both. Here we can say that first part answered in this as why Uttarakhand is vulnerable. So here we have to understand for all types of natural disasters, which natural disasters can happen in Himalayan state or even Uttarakhand first. So there can be earthquake, there can be flash floods as happened in 2013. Here in Nepal there was earthquake, and then we can say that the similar kind of earthquake can happen because it lies in earthquake prone zone, right? So zone 4 and zone 5 we can say that. Then flash floods and then landslides. Then we can also say that the glacial avalanche or glacial bursts and subsequent avalanche. Such kind of natural disasters, the complete Uttarakhand state is somehow prone to all these natural disasters, right? So you need to know what kind of natural disaster it is prone, and in this article it is specifically talking about glacial burst and subsequent flooding of downstream areas, right? So why it is vulnerable? So first you have to understand that it is the topography. It lies in Himalayan region, and Himalayan region is so fragile. It is made up of completely the unconsolidated sediments. Okay, and because of that it is more fragile for, let's say, landslides. If there is earthquake, then there will be more and more landslides and blocking of river flows. All these things will happen there, right? At the same time, there is, let's say, intense rainfall that may happen in short amount of time, that may lead to flash floods in that region. So these are the vulnerabilities here we are talking about. At the same time, it is more and more vulnerable for soil erosion, and then we can say subsequent sedimentation. All these dams which are built, they are the sediments are getting obstructed there. These dams are having huge pressure from these sediments, and there is threat of bursting these dams. These are vulnerabilities, we can say that. Now in addition to that, the new phenomenon, we will say that the climate change. So it has already it has increased the vulnerabilities which are already present, right? At the same time, rapid and indiscriminate construction activities, deforestation that is going on, right? So ecological destruction in the region is happening because of various infrastructure projects, especially the hydropower projects and other such projects, like be it religious tourism, ecotourism, all these not ecotourism, the religious tourism that is happening in Uttarakhand state. So because of that, the tourist activities and unsustainable tourist activities practices are there. Construction along the slopes, all these increases the vulnerability of these natural disasters, and somehow that may lead to more and more loss of life and property in future in the event of such natural disaster, right? So large scale human settlements, expansion of agriculture activities leading to massive deforestation. Yes, these may also trigger such kind of landslides and these let's say glacial burst in future. Okay, so yes, experts are of the view that this kind of let's say the glacial burst that happened is because of the rock mass that weakened from years of freezing and thawing activity that fell upon the glacier, and glacier then subsequently together that subsided down, fell on the river flow, and it melted, and whatever the water flow was there, that was huge along with debris it carried. Okay. Yes, so this is the vulnerability we are talking about here, and one report that has highlighted this vulnerability, you can refer this Hindu Kush Himalayan Assessment Report 2019, very important, Hindu Kush Himalaya Assessment Report 2019. It had pointed that 1/3 of Hindu Kush Himalayas glaciers would melt by 2100, even if we attain the targets under Paris Agreement. Even if we attain the targets under Paris Agreement, at least 1/3 of the ice of Hindu Kush Himalayas, the together that mountain system, the ice will melt down. Okay, this is the kind of vulnerability this ecosystem is facing here. So how do we focus on building the resilience to such vulnerabilities in the Uttarakhand state, we can say, and overall Himalayan ecosystem? So way forward, here it is talking about investing in resilience planning, especially in flood prevention and rapid response. Along with that, it is talking about the climate proofing of whatever the infrastructure we are building and whatever the infrastructure that is already built. So there should be retrofitting, or in general we can say that climate proofing of the infrastructure there in Uttarakhand state. Then the strengthening of embankment with adequate scientific know-how. So embankment along the, let's say, banks of these rivers, so that the flood water is not overflowing. So embankments are very important, but they should be there on the basis of scientific, let's say, research and know-how. Then reassessing the development of hydropower and other public infrastructure. There should be continuous evaluation of impact of these projects, and those projects which are surely going to have more impact on ecology of Himalayas, they should be not promoted, they should be struck down. Then investing in robust monitoring and early warning system. This is very important to reduce the loss of life and property, we will say that. Then establishing implementable policies, regulatory guidelines, especially for ecotourism and religious tourism. Right. So Uttarakhand state is such state which largely has the revenue generation from religious tourism, adventure tourism, ecotourism, we will say that. Like adventure tourism, we know that the adventure sports in Uttarakhand state, like at many places like Rishikesh, Haridwar, or Haridwar is religious place, or Rishikesh is also religious place, but there are many such adventure sports are being developed in that region, right? So that tourism practices, there should be guidelines for sustainable tourism practices, strict guidelines and implementation of those guidelines. Okay. Along with that, investing in training and capacity building of local people, right? The community should be so much, let's say, trained, and their capacity should be strengthened so as to deal with such kind of events that may occur in future. So in this manner, you should adopt the way forward for that purpose, and ultimately we can say that we need to rise up to this challenge by applying innovative and inclusive solutions, right? So innovative and inclusive solutions, so that we support nature and marginalized communities to restore and rebuild the resilient future for Uttarakhand. In this manner, we can conclude this question or answer to this question. Fine. So yes, you try to attempt this question, because now this is very much in news, and surely there will be question either in GS1 or GS3 paper, or there will be essay topic regarding this. Fine. Yes. Now from prelims perspective, there is one news that privilege motion against Moitra. Now some of the members have moved the privilege notice against Trinamool Congress MP Mahua Moitra over her remarks against former Chief Justice of India in Lok Sabha. Now, what is this privilege motion? What are these privileges? What are the sources of parliamentary privileges? So, let us understand first that why there are privileges in first place, right? So, parliamentary privileges are given to these members of parliaments for, let us say, a free and without fear the working of these MPs should be in this manner, that they should not be working under any kind of pressure, external pressure or bias or something like that. That's why they are provided with certain privileges. And when these privileges are, we can say that, broken or disregarded, then the offense is called breach of privileges and is punishable under the law of parliament, we can say that. Okay. Now, what is the origin of these parliamentary privileges? Yes, the source, we can say that our constitution itself provides for certain privileges. Along with that, there are parliamentary conventions and the laws of the parliament. So, such sources are there for parliamentary privileges. Now, who can move the privilege motion? So, this privilege motion, the notice for such motion can be moved by any member of parliament against any other member where he or she feels that there is breach of privilege. Okay. Now, especially such kind of privilege motions earlier have been let us say moved against largely ministers. You have to understand such privileges are there in the collective manner as well as individual. So, there are collective privileges as well as individual privileges. Such collective privileges are largely provided to Council of Ministers. So, together Council of Ministers has certain privileges, and individually each and every member minister, they have certain privileges, right. So, what are the rules for governing privileges? So, both the Lok Sabha rule book and Rajya Sabha rule book has some mentions, like rule number 222 in chapter 20 of Lok Sabha, and similar manner in Rajya Sabha rule book also they have certain provisions. However, the criteria says that whatever the privilege or breach of privilege that incident happened, that incident should be of recent occurrence and should need the intervention of the House. That only will be considered, and notice for such kind of motion should be given before the presiding officer before 10 am. Okay. So, morning before 10 am itself it should be given before starting the proceedings of parliament or that house. What is the role of speaker and Rajya Sabha chairman? So, here the presiding officers are actually the first members or first, let us say, step for scrutiny of this breach of privilege or that privilege motion. Okay. Here however, the speaker or chairman can decide on privilege motion himself or refer it to privilege committee of parliament. Okay. So, either he can decide or he can also refer it to the privilege committee of the parliament. Now, what is this privilege committee? This privilege committee, like speaker nominates the committee of privileges consisting 15 members in Lok Sabha as per respective party strengths, right. So, each and every party according to its strength surely get representation in privilege committee. Okay. And therefore, this 15 member committee, privilege committees, we will say that part of parliamentary committee, and it scrutinizes this allegations or breach of privileges, and the report is submitted to House. Now, there can be half an hour discussion on that report if the presiding officer permits, and in the end the resolution may then be moved relating to breach of privilege that has to be unanimously passed. It should be unanimously passed, otherwise generally in past we can say that such motions have been largely denied, they have not been passed. Okay. So, we have to remember this. So, from prelims perspective, this much information regarding parliamentary privileges is enough. Suppose I will give you example. Suppose a particular minister who is providing certain, let us say, answers to questions which are asked to him, and suppose he or she provides the wrong facts, wrong data there. then we can say that that is breach of privilege. Okay. So here the minister is individually responsible to provide the correct data in the parliament. He is responsible to the parliament, right? And that's why that is privilege here, that that person is enjoying the privilege. And if that person is giving the wrong data, wrong facts, okay, so then that will be called as breach of privilege, and any other member can start, let's say, initiate the privilege motion against that minister. Okay. So in this manner you have to remember there can be a practice question you can attempt here about this privilege motion. Try to attempt this question, because now you have to shift to prelims examination preparation. You need to practice more and more MCQs, especially from current affairs. If they are having link with the basics of your syllabus, then try to attempt such kind of question. You attempt this question and give answer to comment box of this video. Okay. Yes. Then some prelims pointers. So one article especially was talking about hydroponics. So you need to know about the meaning here. Hydroponics here is the growing of crops without use of actual soil, only using water. So whatever the minerals and the essential nutrients that are required for growth of crops, they are provided through or dissolving through water. Okay, so soil is not required for growth of those crops, here we can say, and this method is called as hydroponics. Okay, so there is also one more method called as aquaponics. It was in news recently. From current affairs also you need to know about aquaponics. Here in aquaponics, growing of crops and the fish is also grown. So this is simultaneously done, and whatever the excreta of that fish, it is dissolving in that water, then that water is flown into let's say provided to the for the growth of those crops, and these crops are receiving the nitrogenous, let's say nutrients from the excreta of this fish. They are utilizing those nitrogenous let's say excreta, these crops are utilizing that, and again the water is getting purified, then water is again moving back to the fish tank. This is how the aquaponics works here. Fine. Then one article in supplement related to art and culture, we will say that literature. So it was talking about tanpura. So tanpura is the instrument, many of you may know about this. So this tanpura is the musical instrument which is used for by both the Hindustani music artists as well as Carnatic music artists. So Hindustani music, which is largely developed in northern India, Carnatic music, which is largely developed in southern India. So both of them use this tanpura, but they in northern let's say India, it is called as tanpura, Hindustani musicians, and Carnatic musicians call it as tambura. So from art and culture you need to know about this. Even for mains examination you need to know about this. Now there are two types of tanpura, we can say that. So Miraj tanpura. Miraj tanpura is favorite form of tanpura for Hindustani performers, Hindustani music, we will say that, while the Tanjore tanpura, so we will call it as Tanjore tambura, South Indian style of tambura, widely used by Carnatic musicians, right. So this Mirajkar family of Miraj in Maharashtra, Western Maharashtra, Southwest Maharashtra, will say that, is regarded as finest producers of tanpuras in the world. Mirajkar family in Miraj, Maharashtra. Okay, tanpura, you need to know about this. Fine. So from art and culture perspective, you can take input accordingly. At the same time, whenever there is in future the article regarding music, so classical music, there is Hindustani a type of classical music and Carnatic music also, both of them are classical, and that is important for our examinations, but largely for mains examination. Fine. So yes, these were important articles from today's The Hindu newspaper. अगर आपको ये वीडियो पसंद आता है तो ज़रूर इसको लाइक कीजिए, कमेंट कीजिए और हमारे चैनल को सब्सक्राइब कीजिए। For further information on editorial discussion classes or ED classes, wherein in-depth analysis of mains related issues and articles is done by Ansari sir and team, you can contact Lukman IAS. Thank you.